So, welcome to episode 4 of This Might Be Legal, a podcast specialized in legal matters. So, it is episode 4. We have already spoken in the previous episode about investment, about certain legalities, about unique abilities. And today we wanted to speak about startups and especially what makes a startup successful and what goes wrong if you don't take real action from the beginning. For that, I invited the management of Laine Neural Network, a startup that is in development in the legal tech. And those are my co-management team, Jean, the CEO, Mona, the Chief Marketing Officer, and our CTO, Quentin. Welcome.
Thank you.
Mona will take the lead and maybe you want to present yourself and present the others.
So, thank you, Dominique, for the introduction. I'm Mona, of course. I started working with you maybe almost 6 years ago now, and it was very interesting. I can tell that I've learned so many things in so many different fields. It's not just my own kind of field, and um, and I can say that you always have a good eye to pick on what's wrong. And that's actually what we want to talk about today. It's all about what mistakes founders make before they start their own kind of business and what they realize, but it's actually a bit too late. So on that matter, I want to start asking you some questions. Um, so if you want to say the truth about it, what's the first thing that most founders get wrong when they build their own startup?
Look, I think it's perfection. I think being the time to market is important, right?
Yeah.
The proof of concept is important. So, what I have seen in my investment life also is what went wrong is when the founders never wants to release his invention, right? So because it's never perfect enough, there's always a small bug or that button should be better there, and then you lose time, you lose funds because you keep on having to pay for it. Cash is oxygen. So I would say the proof of concept is very important to start with. Perfection is something that is a long journey. So that is the answer that I would say.
That's a very good thing because it's true. We just keep looking at all these details and we forget that we need the machine to keep going. So, in your experience as well, what looks fine on the surface, but it's actually a ticking bomb underneath?
Look, it has happened to me one time. Um, a, a fast deal, so a handshake deal. You know, you agree with your colleagues. Usually, startups they all start with two friends, right? Oh, let's do an idea. Someone has an idea and he wants to share it, and he wants to have a co-founder. So he's going to find his best friend. Handshake deal, but the handshake deal only speaks about um, one topic, right? So one, let's do that business together, not about the small details of if it's failing, if it's successful, how we're going to share certain things, and then so no details are there, and then you will see um, as time passes, people never remember the details the same way than during that discussion, and that's exactly when things go wrong
Yeah.
because a dispute arises. Investors do not like dispute. The project doesn't move on. You don't want to be the two brothers of Facebook, right? So speaking about an idea, letting the other one do, having a handshake, come back, and then at some point you don't have any contractual documents, and you need to go through a very long litigation to try to prove that the idea comes from you, or to be Eduardo, right? So
And then you actually lose both. You lose the friend that you started with and you lose the business.
and you lose the business. So the devil is into details.
Yeah.
What I maybe also like about that is I was by nature somebody who would be very happy, for example, when we first met, right, and we started to discuss the idea and then get into the nitty gritty of starting Lane and building on it together. I would be the person who would normally say, like, I like the handshake. I'm fine. I trust you. Let's go for it. But I think not only having those agreements set you up for success in the future, but it also did something I think very important for me, is put me in the right frame of mind. It's a tough conversation to have, right? It's talking about what can go wrong, what might go actually very right, right? But by talking about the future in such detail and sharing that vision also on the legal side, really helped me, I think, to put me in the right frame of mind. So it's a secondary effect, but a very nice one, I think.
So what I would even say is like, avoid the handshake with the people to claim honesty.
Yeah.
You know, whoever you have, you know, those guys who come and says, you know, I'm honest. I've always been honest. And you know, the person who needs to claim honesty
Yeah.
is probably because there's a problem there. I've met one not so long ago.
So from that point, actually, it was a very good point, Jean. What are the legal kind of structures that must be in place before you start?
Look, the minimum. The minimum is when you. Let me phrase that question again.
Yeah.
When you do a startup, of course, the idea is great. You know, what are you trying to do to prove that you can develop something? So the intellectual stimulation is there. But at the end of the day, if that things grow, you want to be able to monetize it.
Yeah.
And not only the product, but yourself, you know, that the time that you spent, the effort, and so you need to get your cap table right. You need to make sure that from the beginning, the cap table is correct so that you don't get diluted completely by the end. And there was no point of doing all that exercise. So for you to get the cap table right, you need to get the corporate structure in place and certain level of agreement, right? So with people. So that's what I would say is the most important. It will also allow you to put that first cornerstone into your project, which is solid, on which you can build something. If you start, I've seen so many people starting with startups, you know, and of course, be careful what you don't know about. So and often startups led by tech people. So they start with a product, which you obviously you have to do, but because they don't think about all these problems because they haven't been exposed to it. They are two friends, two tech guys, and doing these things, and then at the end, one has put more work on it. Then the other one has had maybe some other issues to deal with. Then I've worked more than you, so I should have more than you. And then the deal was not clear from the beginning. The deal needs to be clear from the beginning. And then we have an example of a very bright guy that we've worked with in your previous job. We're not sure that yet the deal was clear with his new partners, and then I hope for him he will be able to solve it.
Yeah, that's exactly what we see, right? As I would say, product first startups, people that think in technology, in the product, the things that they want to build first, which is, I think, in terms of mindset, I really like it because it's you want to build something, you want to bring something to the world, and you want to make a change. So that I really like, but you immediately jump into the pitfall of this is the only thing that counts. And in a startup, as with every business, it's always a balance. And so you've already spoken quite a lot about the balance on the legal side. Make good agreements in the beginning so that you don't have to do these battles when they actually start to count. Because unfortunately, if you say, for example, I worked way harder than you did, so I deserve a bigger piece of the pie, that only comes into play when the pie actually is very big and when things become successful. So it's not the moment that you want to have it, because that's actually the moment you need to scale, to grow, and to actually make sure that the results actually are happening. So what I tend to see a lot with those tech first, product first startups is they don't even know that they need to think about these things. That's on the tech side, but you also have the same on the business side, on the sales side.
Hence that podcast.
Yes. People tend to build before ever even trying to sell something. So if there's like one thing I truly hope for those people and the person that you're talking about is try to get a sale, maybe even before you've built something. If build a PowerPoint presentation, build a mock-up, like something that just shows what you're heading towards, try to sell it, because that already ticks so many of the boxes. And that means there's demand.
So that is the proof of concept. You need to make sure that your proof of concept works, and then that people will buy. That's what we've done for Laine, right?
Yeah.
So obviously we have started an awareness strategy, and allowing people to register for the testing, which will happen by the end of the year or early next year, and then you see if people are willing to actually register
And give us also a good kind of feedback from them, because at the end of the day, we also like to see what users would like to make it, how to make it better, what we can add. And at the end of the day, it's always good to hear from the people.
I also want to add to that it's really important to have like a diverse founding team. Like I have a technical background, and I don't want to have to think about, like, while I'm making technical decisions or steering the engineering team, have to think about marketing decisions, about financial decisions, about like the entire legal structure that you mentioned, Dominique. And I think for tech people, it's very often very sort of tempting to say like, oh, we're like 2 developers, we can just, get the bare minimum legal setup and then like just focus on developing the product and not have to worry about all of these other things. And having like a diverse sort of founding team, especially where you have like a lot of trust, really allows like technical people to focus on the things that they really are good at, and then have other people like take care of the things that are equally important, and that maybe not always like tech people see that those things are very important.
And
as well.
of course, there are always exceptions, right? So you again, Facebook, we've Zuckerberg started. He was a tech guy, and probably, I don't know, in the movie actually we don't know who did the legal, but when you have a good idea, you can also have quick enough a VC fund coming, and they will be then the one taking over all that part, or imposing it to you, imposing a legal counsel, imposing and financing a legal counsel to get things right. But the problem is that if that investors is not so well-minded, he can easily put certain ticking bomb in that contract, and then that means that you don't see it. You continue developing, and at some point, when you want to cash in yourself, you realize that actually you're no longer that funder shareholders, but you are a minority, and you barely have nothing to say, or you cannot follow in the next rounds, and you get diluted again and again and again and again until the company doesn't need you anymore, and then you're just left aside. Right?
That's true.
Maybe on top of that, because I think, yes, VCs can help you, especially if you don't have that in-house technology knowledge at that point. But I do think the positive of having sorted out all the legal side of things before, it shows a lot of maturity towards VCs. Because for startups, often one of the biggest hurdles is trying to get a VC to actually fund you, to actually believe in the whole idea, and just showing that maturity. I've talked already about that mindset that puts the company in. I mean, I've noticed it in our conversations as well. Having a clear cap table, having clear agreements, it just gives a VC a lot of confidence that they're working with mature people that really thought this through. And for me, that's like you're already one step ahead of a lot of the competition.
And you go back to that point is you actually need people who knows exactly what they're doing in that exact same field. So you need a good person to reflect that idea well to the right people, and you need good people to actually build it well on the background. So
yeah, maybe we can explain what a cap table is as well. It's because cap table is a table of capitalization. That means the allocation of shares between the partners or the shareholders of the business, right? So you might not have a company initially, but at least if you have a partnership, then you need to be able to clearly say how much of the partnership you own and what rights you have towards your ownership, right? It's important.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna steal the lights a bit from you and focus on Quentin. So Quentin, knowing that everything now, if you're starting a tech, of course, company, you'll need a good tech team. So from your experience, what are the mistakes that usually people do or like you face?
I think one of the biggest mistakes, it's not just for startups, but it's a lot more detrimental for startups, is that people forget about like complexity in like technical decisions. And complexity is something that if you're very early on for startups, that it doesn't look that big because your product and your code base and they're not that big, but it sort of really compounds in the wrong direction. And you don't really want to find yourself sort of 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the line, where you're sort of like trying to hit growth and then have to face all of that complexity, and then you're sort of like you're stuck in the mud, and then you have to do things like refactors and rebuilds and like migrations and things like that. And I think especially for early founders, like keeping your product as simple as possible and just focus on like what is the added value that our product can give, and what is the simplest technical solution that we can get towards showing that added value is a really, really important thing for founders to keep in mind.
I really liked with Quentin. We had a lot of conversations, of course, while deciding the technical backbone of the company, and you really put a lot of emphasis on the let's avoid the shiny new object fallacy, right? Because well, it's an AI legal tech startup, so there's a lot of shiny new objects that we could try out, new technologies, new platforms. I think you really had a nice way of looking at it. Is the startup that we're building is already shining and new enough. Let's look at maybe older and boring technology, but that we at least know that it scales. Like, what is your point of view on that more generally? Should everybody do that?
I think a good example of that is custom model development for AI companies. It is one of those shiny new objects, and like really large companies, like the hyperscalers and like companies that raise $1 billion, they can do like custom model development because it costs a lot in compute, it costs a lot in like research effort. But the added value is like 2%, 5%. And for those companies, for Google, adding 2%, it's a massive deal. But for young startups, like that 2% is not really the differentiator. So then if you start investing a lot in that and you sort of start neglecting the 90% or the 80% that really brings value, I think that sort of it keeps you away from like really having your product hit that like vertical part of your growth scale.
People tend to underestimate, I think, the cost of going for that shiny new object.
Yeah.
They see a lot of benefit, but there's a big hidden cost.
Yeah. And even like small, like, like you lose 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there, a week there, that really compounds over time. And especially with complexity or with shiny new objects, it's very hidden because like your engineer spends, instead of 4 hours, they spend 8 hours developing. And that looks like, oh, it's like all one day. But that sort of, it really compounds over time, and it really, like, your development team has to be twice as big, or like it takes you like months longer to get to value. And that's really something to be very mindful of very early on in startup.
So speaking of the team as well, what's your role when you're choosing the right kind of team?
I think with recruitment, there's sort of two things that are really important. I always look at it as sort of, you have a base technical knowledge that every engineer should have. And that's something that you can test fairly straightforwardly in interviews. You do like coding interviews, you do system design interviews. And in an hour and a half, 2 hours, you get like a fairly good grasp of like what is sort of the base technical knowledge. The other part is that engineers have sort of all their preferences and things that they want to work on. And you want your team to be, especially in an early stage startup, like to cover as much of the technology as you want. Because if you sort of all hire like engineers that want to work on this sort of niche, and then don't want to work on the other things, then it's gonna like really slow you down, because then they have to figure things out along the way. So when I'm hiring something or hiring someone, I focus first of all on like the technical knowledge, but then most importantly on what type of person do we want to put in the team, like, and how do they complement the team that already exists. If I start hiring a bunch of people that are like me, that's a lot less valuable because I'm already there. So I need people that have like, maybe a much bigger focus on design or something like that.
Yeah, that's the the topic of a conference. I paid $10,000 to follow a class, and actually I didn't have so much time, but I just got one sentence from that class which actually helped me. So that $10,000 were actually really valuable, because all of this is who, not how. Who is your who? And that's exactly what we've done here. Is like, who is your commercial person? Who is your chief of everything that monitor? Who is your chief tech person? Who is the chief legal, or who knows the industry? We have also who is doing the data protection, and who is the who. Not step on those who's, not try to do it yourself, not be the how, right? So because you lose too much time to try to learn things where you don't have that unique ability to do. And in every team, it's the same thing. Who is your who? I think this is.
I think a good analogy, I mean, my perspective is obviously like a tech team, but a good analogy, because I really like football, is that founders or like early stage companies often have like the sort of tendency of like, oh, we hire the smartest people. But then if you have a football team and you have like 9 strikers, going to lose every game. So you need people that sort of cover the entire field and that have like a coherent team as a whole, and not just sort of are focused on one thing in general.
Maybe underrated within this conversation as well is even at this table, we have a lot of different personalities. And we have people by nature that are more technologically focused. And what we tend to see with a lot of tech people is they like to quickly iterate, they like to test out things.
Mhm.
We have legal experts here at the table as well.
The
who-
boring guy.
No, I was about to say by nature are looking at things to be more complete, to be more airtight. Like it needs to be legally binding, it needs to be done well, right? So by nature, those two people, they tend sometimes to clash. And I think we're definitely at Laine while we're looking at people to hire. An underestimated fact is a bit of humor, a bit of
Yeah.
kindness in people. Because we're all people that speak their own language,
Mhm.
but we're trying to do something together.
That's true.
And like a little bit of humor here and there, like a little act of kindness can really go a long way. So
Yeah.
that's also what I'm looking for while we're hiring.
Well, we have the right person for that, for sure. I mean, he is very focused on details, but that also what makes
That's what we need.
exactly because you don't know what you don't know, and that's something that you said before.
Look, guys, it's it's a legal tech, and unfortunately, the legal industry lives on details.
Yeah.
And we started that podcast by saying, at the beginning, you need to do the boring stuff, right? You need to actually put those contracts together, make sure that people are happy with the terms, they understand the terms, and of course, it takes time to do the first one, the second one. But then the more you organize, the faster it goes after as well. So it's not time that you lose. It's time that it is an action that makes you win time later on. Imagine a company where you have a handshake, you have a chat GPT contract, you have the template of the former agreement type of thing. Nothing is aligned and it's a disaster. And then at some point you need to say, okay, well, we need to go and see a VC fund, or we need to go see an investor. And the guy makes a due diligence and says, look, guys, it's great, but you need to align that. And then your handshake says, but I understood that I would have this and that and that. And I said, well, I don't remember. And then ChatGPT made a contract that is unenforceable. And then so what do we do with it? And then your former employment contract is according to previous law. It's not even according. And it takes so much drama. Then that little touch, humor and stuff like that can go sour because of the terms. And especially if the company fails, it's no point, because anyway, it just
It's nothing to
fails.
discuss.
The problem is like when the company is successful, that is a cause that can actually put your company down.
And that's the thing, because even if you go and ask ChatGPT, what are you asking ChatGPT? You don't even know. And that's the problem, because at the end of the day, people tend to go there instead of going to a lawyer because they think it's an easy way, but then they don't know the consequences that will come to them. So Jean, I just want, so now you said that we need a bit of humor.
Yeah.
And Dominique wants a lot of so many professionals. So how do you actually, when you're trying to hire and looking for the right team and people that get along, how do you manage like hiring fast and hiring right? What's your concept of that?
So I think unfortunately hiring fast is super difficult. So we'll tend to not always work, and we try to take our time. And even if you take your time, you sometimes make mistakes. But what I try to do, especially for every startup, I think you need to have the right balance of that product mindset. In our case, it's a legal and tech product, and that business mindset. Especially in the early stage, I'm really attracted to people who have a builder mindset. I want people to, and pardon my French, but to get shit done.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning. There is the gap from 0 to 1 is way bigger than from 1 to 100, for example. And I think I really look for people who are willing to create something out of nothing. So that's a really important part. Then I typically tend to ask myself the question, would the person in front of me match well with both gentlemen who are also sitting next to me? And because I think the three of us nicely illustrate sort of the triangle of our startup. It's a legal AI company. And that's what we're looking for. I think for founders more in general, you should always be looking for that balance between the product that you're trying to build. It doesn't have to be technology. You can be selling like real knowledge about a commodity that you're selling, for example, but also that business mindset. And especially in the beginning, because that's the foundation, the cornerstone of your company that you're going to build. And later down the line, you have time to look for specialists. I mean, we had the discussion of, for our tech team, do we look for more generalists or do we look for specialists? We decided to build generalists in the beginning because we need to go from 0 to 1. Once we're at 100, we have plenty of space, plenty of breathing room, plenty of cash, plenty of oxygen to start looking for the specialists and go for the 2% increase.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's quite a difficult one, right? It's
Yeah, it
it's
is.
a lot of checks.
Because it's even difficult to align even tech
Yep.
people with business people, with compliance people, with
100%.
so it's not an easy task. So, what kind of sign that you can take in a business to see if it's ready to scale up or if it's too early?
So I hinted already at the sometimes the often neglected part of just sales.
Yeah.
And there's I think in our case, I'll zoom out a bit more, is we had to do two things. We first had to check whether or not it was possible. We're trying to build a very novel legal AI tech. That's where the proof of concept comes in. That's what Dominique and I did at the beginning. Then there's a second point of a product market fit. I think first and foremost, you need to understand the market, which is why it's really good to partner up with people who have a deep understanding of that market, but also try and test out if actually people want to use it. And so I used the example of maybe try to sell something before you've even built it. And that's a really important thing. And for me, that gives you, if you have the proof of concept, if you have at least some sort of product market fit, and you have the in-house knowledge that you really have a vision on how to grow it, I think you're in a great position to get started. And even then, things can go wrong. But again, I like the way that we started is we really dig down on what are the agreements, what are the next steps, setting ourselves up for success. Again, if it's a failure, having good agreements, it's less important because there's not that much to actually take care of.
Yeah, that's true.
But in terms of scalability, scalability, the idea of you cannot, if you're from an investor standpoint, invest into a company that cannot be scalable. So scalability is something that at the moment where you have the idea, you have to ask yourself whether it's scalable or not. Who are your competitors? So if your cousin is the best cook on earth and she wants to have a small restaurant at the beach in Italy, and it's a great thing. You know that she's going to be successful, that people will come. Is it scalable? It's not scalable. Unless she wants to go into a franchise business, unless she wants to do certain things that needs to be discussed then. If you invest into your cousin restaurant, then don't expect to do a multiple of 10, 20, 50 times. You're going to give her 100,000 euros. In 20 years, you're going to get 150,000 euros, right? Because it's a constant liquidity. It's maybe like a bit of a dividend every year, but it's not something where the core value will come. So scalability is something that in your idea, it needs to be there. Then of course, it's when do you unleash scalability of your idea, right?
Exactly.
So and then that's when your products start working, and you have built it in such a way that it's easy to scale. And that's actually what we're doing with Laine, right? To be able to then go from one market to another market in an easy way without having to rebuild everything from a tech standpoint or from a legal database standpoint, right?
That's true. No, that's a very good point. So I just out of the topic, if you're, because I know that you're an investor as well, so if you go there and you see kind of a startup company that wants to come to you and pitch an idea, what kind of catches your attention on that? What are, like, how do you say that, no, that's not for me, or this is actually for me, when you hear a pitch?
There's a number of criteria, but I would say the main one at a startup level, like a really a pre-seed level, would be the team. I think the team is key. If I don't feel the team, then I'm not going to go there. If I feel the team, that they're organized, they know what they want, they have thought about all what we've discussed, right, in terms of ideas, scalability, development, and that it sounds smart, then I will be able as an investor to be a passive one or to be an active one and help them. Maybe if they miss the legal part, then I will be able to help them here. Or if they miss a bit of more liquidities, then I will be able to introduce them to other investors. But the team is key. You don't have a great company without a great funding team.
That's a good thing. So, are we a good team?
I'll say yes.
Yes. Let's. So, what do you need to do in the first 90 days of building the business, like legally and technically and strategically? This is like a question for all of you.
I would say, depending on your idea, is you have to protect your idea. So if it's an idea that can be patented, you have to patent it. You know, you don't want to develop, have a proof of concept, start developing, go see investors, and all of a sudden everybody can copy what you're doing. So being able to protect your idea, again, ownership of you take control of the ownership of your idea is the first thing. Then, as I said, right, making your cap table right. So finding your team member, and it might take more time, right? It's look, we've started Laine. I acted as the lead person for a while until such time said, now we need a CEO. Now we need, we've hired one or two great companies to develop the tech until such time said we need to onboard the tech. We find a great CTO, and you build your team, because that cannot be necessarily done in the 90 first days. So you need to hire slow, but hire right, and so don't confuse speed and progress. You can try to go super fast and do things, but is that real actual progress? Progress is being able to put a stone that will remain there in 20 years for your company, the cornerstone, and one stone after the other one. And so when you start building your wall, the base of your wall correctly, then the rest goes much faster. If the base is shaky, then it will take a lot of time to actually readdress it. And actually, you might sometimes not even readdress it, right? At some point, it will fall.
I think from a technical perspective, also, it's important that you can sort of, like what Jean mentioned earlier, like you can use like hype technologies, and sometimes it adds a little bit more value. Like Rust is a very popular programming language now, but it takes longer for engineers to onboard it. It's earlier in its development stage. And sometimes like using more boring technologies, especially for the things that sort of don't add immediate value, is a way safer bet. Like it lowers the risk by a lot, and then you sort of don't get stuck like later on in development cycle.
I think that maybe from the business angle, I think it's also important to have a vision, right? Very early on in a startup, and people always say startup, you need to be fluent, you need to be able to make shifts, you need to be able to make changes. That's all very true, but I think it's also important very early on to have a vision of what the end state could look like. And people tend to speak about you should build a scooter before you build a Ferrari. It's a very well-known illustration in tech, for example. But as long as you don't know what your Ferrari, your end goal is, you might not need to build a scooter. You might need to build an airplane, or you might need to build part of your garden, right? It might be super different. But having at least a good, clear vision of what some of the intermediate and your end goal would be in those first 90 days helps you make the right decisions, helps you meet the right people, makes you help employ the right people, but also make the right technical choices. And that comes from vision as well.
So what is a myth that everyone believes in, but it's actually not true once they're starting?
That you're going to sell for 200 million at Google. It happens, but you're not necessarily going to have Google knock at the door 6 months later and give you 400 million.
I think that's very fair. For me, I would, although Google, if you want to reach out, always happy to. What I would definitely say is people know that startups are very intense, but it can also be a lot of fun.
I don't know how many crap company Google bought at 300 million, Must be a lot.
I hope you're not hearing us, Google. Yeah, maybe. So that's a question for all of you. What's the tool that you can't live without as a startup builder?
I'll say something unconventional and not a tech tool or anything. I'm travel quite a lot at the moment, so what I can't live without is an eye mask and like a nose strip. Just makes me sleep so much better, and I need it at the moment. So
We were comparing sleep scores. Did I
yes,
do?
yes, we were
And
fighting
Jean,
about our
like
sleep scores.
85, or I think it was like 26. Like, how you do that?
Eye mask and a nose strip. That's the magic.
So it's not a tool. It's not a tool. It's a person. So I think you all need your Adrian. You know, you remember the movie Rocky Balboa, the one that gives you the energy, a supporting wife.
Oh,
Amen.
And I'm lucky.
oh, that's really, that's true. You need always someone behind you to like always motivate you, be by your side.
Not only this, that supports you, that understands that it's
Yeah.
going to be eating a portion of your life, and for a period of time you have to be focused, and is there supporting you and giving you that energy. If you have a stable um, household uh, uh, that gives you energy, you can achieve twice more than if you have to deal with issues when you go home.
That's very true.
Can I change my answer because my wife will also watch this?
I-
And I'll definitely go for the
Yeah,
next answer.
you're in trouble now.
Forget the nose strips.
You're in deep trouble. You're in deep trouble. That's why I wanted us to, because I wanted to get that one for myself. Hi Sam,
Just in case.
just in case.
What is it for you, Quentin?
For me, it's an actual tool because you're cheating your way to a nicer home life. No, for me, it's like Cursor. Like I'm spending my head in like tech, and Cursor really sort of accelerates a lot of what the tech does. I can do things like 10, 20 times faster than what I used to be able to do. So it's actually when I first started at Laine, like I got the code base and I spent like I think like 10 hours just like asking questions about like what the code base was, like what is this, what's that, things like that. So for especially like non-technical founders as well, you can just talk to your code base now, and you can like ask it questions like what's the quality of this, like how do they do that, what's like especially things like what's the risk, what are complexity, like are there things that will need like a lot of work in the future if you want to scale. So I would definitely recommend even for non-technical people to download Cursor, get like the tech local and start interacting with it.
Complete the sentence. Startup don't fail because of bad ideas. They fail because
Execution, like that's by far the biggest modifier I think for success.
Yeah, I think here, I think we all agree on that. It's
Yeah.
execution. Have a great execution plan.
But
Ex-
on
A clear execution plan.
on all sides, right? Like technical, but also like all the like the cap table and all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you said it well. So we had a great discussion today. It was a great episode. We would like you to subscribe and follow us. And if you have any questions, just please ask.